That is what I'm going to argue is underlying a strange move like this, a business operating in a way that is not businesslike, that does not appear oriented towards maximizing shareholder value over the future. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to make a weird connection. We see that same odd phenomenon with the Dylan Mulvaney fiasco with Anheuser-Busch. And the idea is, ordinarily, you would find a property like Anheuser-Busch very reluctant to say anything that suggested a strong political perspective at all, because why would you want to limit your beverage consumption to people of one ideology when there might be people of another ideology who are thirsty also?
Yeah, I guess I'm not as compelled that this is the same. That what's going on, that your model, you're asking a question about why Fox appears to be acting in a way that isn't good for Fox's business, and is the answer the same as the answer to the question, why is Anheuser-Busch acting in a way that doesn't appear to be good for Anheuser-Busch's business? Now, the VP of whatever at Anheuser-Busch, who made the decision to hire Dylan Mulvaney, is on some sort of extended leave of absence now. Not clear. I haven't kept up with the story. I don't know that it really matters. But so, Anheuser-Busch did, put some kind of a corrective in place. But that's actually, I don't think, that's not so much the interesting part. The reason I'm not sure this is the same is that trans rights, and specifically trans rights activism, is being pushed on us, and somehow a tremendously large number of Americans, at least, and other people in the weird world have taken this on as truth, that this is the next civil rights battle. And if you really believe that trans rights is the civil rights battle of the day, and that you also, if you were sort of looking around going like, man, the 60s must have been an amazing time to be alive, really fighting for the thing that should have been the case all along, civil rights was finally happening, we were finally getting there. That wasn't, especially in retrospect, right? Civil rights wasn't a political position; it was a human position. This is like, this is what we all should have recognized, and we understand to some degree why we didn't. But here we are, finally catching up to our shared humanity, and let's go. But trans rights aren't like that. Sorry, no, for a number of reasons, and we've talked about it a lot. But in part because this is a, opt-in, you don't have to do anything but, put on a woman face and you get to claim to be a woman. And maybe more to the point, you just, well, boy, I feel like I'm trying to go in too many directions here.
I think you're what you're saying makes sense, but I think in some sense it's the cover story. And this is the place where...
Well, but it may work because you've actually got people convinced that if, pick your hero, if Martin Luther King Jr. or Malcolm X were the civil rights leaders that we all needed in the 60s, maybe Dylan Mulvaney is the leader that we all need in the 2020s. And that's, reprehensible on its face, right? But I think a number of people actually believe that, and so maybe something underlying, like why is the trans rights agenda cruising with such alacrity through all of our lives is, of course, a bigger and maybe more interesting question. But people have compelled themselves because they really think that not only are they on the right side of history here, but that you couldn't possibly, there is no possible explanation for being on the other side of it.
Right. And that's why it is a beautiful bludgeon, right? Because if you can successfully get people to make one leap, that this is the same as the fight against Jim Crow or the fight for the freedom of people to be openly gay. If you understand this is that fight, then you can look at the map and you can say, well, I know who the people are who, tried to block the schoolhouse from black kids attending, and I'm going to be on the other side of that fight.
I remember what their angry faces looked like.
Right, exactly. And I don't want to be remembered by history. So people are terrified of being on the wrong side of history, and they have falsely been led to believe that this is a story they already know. It just has a new subject, right? But I would point out, Dylan Mulvaney and Anheuser-Busch, that's one example of something that we see again and again and again, right? Twitter was another such example, right? Twitter was throwing people off for saying perfectly mundane things, right? Now, there was a conservative bias in who it was punishing, but of course it punished all sorts of people. It punished Unity 2020 when we were really just trying to elect courageous, capable patriots to the White House, right? In what may have been a quixotic attempt to do it. But the point was, something about Twitter was behaving in exactly the opposite way that you would imagine that a social media site should. And all of them do. Right? A social media site is in competition for attention, eyeballs, people willing to spend time on Twitter. Why is it throwing off users who, like Meghan Murphy, are simply asserting that men aren't women, right? Even if the people at Twitter disagree with that, this is a perspective for which there is an audience who would come to Twitter and make Twitter wealthier because the overall Twitter audience is bigger.
Same thing, obviously, with YouTube,
Right.
where we remain demonetized for closing in on 2 years now. But I just saw today or yesterday that I guess Kim Iverson had an interview with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is, yes, running for president. And this interview was not even that recent.
Right.
But they took it down. They struck her channel.
Yep.
For daring to speak with someone who is running for president because he suffers from wrongthink.
You know who
As
else
do
had?
so many of
You know
us.
who else had Robert Kennedy Jr. on? Tucker.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is going to. So I did on the list of corporations behaving badly or weirdly. Gillette. We've now forgotten. Gillette did some gender weird thing several years ago and created a huge uproar. And again,
How about Hershey's for
right for
Women's Month, National whatever the month was, but and then I think it was Daily Wire who came out with their own brand of chocolate, she her without nuts and he him with nuts.
Yeah. If you need someone to
Pretty
tell
good.
you which one's which, it's the wrong chocolate for you. Right. So,
Yep.
Okay, we've got a phenomenon. Corporations behaving paradoxically with respect to what they're supposed to be doing, which is making money, and more to the point, their fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders is to put those shareholders in a good position. So why are they politicizing their products when, conservatives and liberals need to shave, drink beer, whatever it is, or discuss things online? All of this is so paradoxical. Now,
Did you say conservatives and liberals need to drink beer?
yes, well,
Just wanted
they
to go back
all
and check on that.
they both drink
Okay.
beer, and therefore you might imagine that a beer producer wouldn't want to piss off part of that audience in advance.
Yeah.
And in fact,
You're not claiming it as a human right.
I mean, look, this used no. Well, I'm now in a predicament because I can't drink beer, and so if it's a human right, maybe I'm being oppressed. But
because of the gluten.
because of the gluten. Yeah. But I would point out, in the past, let's take the Coors Corporation.
Shall we?
In my family, it was well understood that Coors was a reactionary family, right?
The family that owned the brand was reactionary.
Right. And so there was some grumbling about people drinking Coors because it's like, why would you enrich those folks, right? But Coors wasn't being political in their ads. They were doing the opposite. They were obscuring the fact that, or Knott's Berry Farm or any of these entities.
Which, for those who didn't grow up in Southern California, was the third amusement park after Disneyland and Magic Mountain.
Yeah, it was the Circus Vargas of amusement parks. But anyway, the point is, brands used to go out of their way not to connect their politics with their product because money is money, right? So, paradox is why in the current era are these corporations behaving so weirdly and firing their top star and all of these things. And, of course, business people are currently shouting at their television. No, we're not on television. Their screens or their speakers, because the answer, in some sense, is obvious. The proximate answer. It is ESG, right? Now, ESG stands for environment,
social, and governance.
Social and governance, right.